Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. A special welcome to the members of the Italian-South African Chamber of Trade and Industries. My name is Pamina Bora, and I'm the Secretary General of the Italian Chamber. And we welcome you all today to our session on the role of economic recovery that South Africa so desperately needs. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome our distinguished speakers today, starting with Mr. Sang Yoon, CEO of Samsung Africa. Mr. Yoon has been working for Samsung for 30 years, of which 16 in Samsung USA and multiple other countries. Since April 2017, he has made a meaningful impact in accelerating transformation. He joins us today from his Johannesburg office. With us in the virtual room, we also have Mr. Jorge Mendes, CEO of Vodacom Consumer Business. Jorge's career with Vodacom has spanned over 20 years and includes executive positions in the DRC, Tanzania, and Mozambique. Mr. Mendes was previously appointed as Vodacom's Chief Officer for Sales and Distribution in May 2017, where he was responsible for 7 regions in Southern Africa. Then with us in the room, we also have Mr. Lorenzo Tencati joining us all the way from Milano in Italy. He is the co-founder and senior partner of Singular Group. He's a serial entrepreneur, investor, and strategy advisor. He started his career at Bain & Company in Europe and is also a lecturer at the Politecnico di Milano in entrepreneurship and venture capital investing. He spent the last decade working and living in Africa. We'll head over to Lorenzo shortly. Just 2 house rules. For all our participants, please stay muted during the course of the session to avoid background noise, and feel free to submit your questions to the panelists via the chat function of Zoom. I'm now handing over to Lorenzo. Let's kick off the session, and thank you very much for all who joined us.
Thanks, Pamina. Thanks for introducing us and for hosting us. Thanks to the Italian Chamber, and thanks to my guests today. Today we are very much the topic of today, and today is the 10th edition of Singular Compass. Rohit, if you don't mind shifting to the next slide. And today we're very much exploring. So we've started this initiative. This is a pro bono initiative, the purpose of which is to help leaders and decision makers in South Africa and hopefully broadly in Africa in this time of crisis and this time of economic meltdown, really. Today, specifically, we'll try to make a case for innovation and how technology and innovation can really and is really the only and the most powerful option that South African have to shift gear and grow themselves out of the crisis. And in particular, today we're pleased to have Mr. Sang Yoon and Jorge Mendes. What better participants if the purpose is really one of bringing global and local learnings on innovation from a global and local environment than these two gentlemen. Said that, a couple of words, just a word on what Singular is. We are a global management consulting firm with a practitioner mindset, and we focus on themes of strategy, innovation, and investing. So this is very close to our heart. Okay, let's move to the agenda. So we'll try to tackle this discussion in the following way. I mean, we'll look first at the economy. We always do that. We want to keep a finger on the pulse, and we'll try to explore how deep is the crisis and who will be most affected. We'll then move on to the main, let's say, purpose of this conversation, which is really about the centrality of innovation, and in particular about the innovation opportunity that South Africa and Africa have right now to spur socioeconomic growth. And then thirdly, we'll try and reflect with our guests also on what are the sort of challenges and tips that they use and they've seen working successfully and we've seen working successfully in other companies while innovating from within a large corporate. Okay, let's jump deep into the first topic. So first of all, I mean, let's cut to the chase. This is by far the biggest crisis ever since the economic crisis ever since Second World War. We can see that, and this is probably at a global level. We can see that very well reflected in the numbers, and you've just probably seen the latest figures on Q2 contraction of South Africa by 16%. This is not different at all from what the rest of the world has experienced and is experiencing. In South Africa specifically, the business confidence is at the lowest in recorded history, and unemployment number, which is one of the most worrying stats, which started off at roughly 30% COVID, is projected to, over the rest of 2020, to probably increase to almost 40%. That is obviously terrible, and that will have social obviously implications as well. If we look at the future, the GDP, so Singular's perspective is that depending on, so ranging from a best to a worst scenario, the contraction this year of South African economy will likely be anything in between a minus 8% compared to last year to a minus 12% compared to last year. This is obviously gigantic for a country that was already in a recession before COVID-19. So I'm even more interested in trying to really understand and unpack who will be most hit by this crisis, because we all will be hit, but some parties and some areas of the economy are usually more hit than others. And our case here is very much that this crisis will be just like the financial crisis, but even more so, will be a crisis that will hit small businesses much more and more than large corporations and large businesses. And small businesses have a large role to play in terms of employment in a country. So if you look at the job loss in the financial crisis in the US, 60% of the job loss was coming from small and medium-sized businesses with less than 250 employees. And those companies were justifying or representing roughly 45% of total employment. Currently, South Africans SMEs represent roughly 50% of South African employment. So this is obviously, so if we expect small businesses to be more hit than large businesses, we seriously have a problem in front of us. Okay, can move to the next chart. So I would like to throw the discussion, and maybe George, we can start with your perspective. I mean, given that Vodacom is particularly interested in doing business with small and medium-sized businesses, it's an important segment of your business. What are the enablers, or let's say, are you thinking about small and medium businesses as an opportunity and or a threat in this particular phase? And are you doing something in particular to enable small businesses in their recovery?
Thank you, Lorenzo, and good morning, everybody. Well, it's good morning in Johannesburg. I'm not sure where everyone else is, but lovely to be here. Thanks for having us. Hello also to Yoon. Nice to see you again. Lorenzo, I think important to acknowledge the fact that probably around 80% of SMEs fail in the first 2 years. So acknowledging that there's a high failure rate, it's really important to see what can be done about this and what role we play in ensuring that this happens. So from a Vodacom perspective, first and foremost, it was quite critical to ensure that our core services are resilient and are able to withstand greater demand during these difficult times. So resilient network, definitely connectivity through the various products and services as a first step. That includes devices, smart tools for collaboration, information sharing, which would typically increase productivity, and even elements of security. What specifically does that mean? We are very, very keen on ensuring that SMEs succeed. We've got a financial services section of our business now, where we've introduced products like Vodalend, which will ensure loans of up to 1.5 million for these businesses. But more importantly, we've made the journey very digital and very slick. So the application only takes a handful of minutes, probably 3-4 minutes, and the cash is paid to successful applicants within 24 hours. Another example is VodaPay, one of our products. It's payment services, where we're rolling out point-of-sale devices to enable, obviously, a very strong e-commerce scale that we have in place. And soon we will also be going live with QR codes as a payment method. So again, unlocking a lot of economic possibility, specifically in the SME sector. We offer insurance. We have been offering insurance for devices for hardware for some time, but we also offer group schemes from a life cover perspective. We offer legal cover. So quite clearly, one is shifting away from pure connectivity layer to a much deeper vertical in the financial services space to enable SMEs. Two of our pillars, which are effectively our purpose pillars in the Vodacom organization, is around digital society and inclusion for all. And we want to stay true to this by delivering on these kind of products, unlocking economic opportunities, obviously, to ensure growth for small businesses in particular. And then I'd say we've shown a lot of support and partnerships, both in the private sector and the public sector, in the form of health, education, and security. These are National Department of Health partnerships that we've put in play, track and trace capability that's come very much to the fore as a regards to COVID-19 situation. A huge number of zero-rated URLs to make sure that data is accessible to the large population consumers. We School platform, which is an education platform, which was tremendous during lockdown because suddenly you had free access to education to continue educate children during this lockdown situation. And then something close to our hearts is the gender-based violence command center that we realized very quickly that during lockdown, gender-based violence was actually increasing. And we're a big supporter of the command center. We funded, and just to try and ensure, we've actually put a fund together now to ensure that victims have an opportunity to restart their life and that this doesn't happen. So apologies for the long answer, but we're super passionate about trying to ensure that we play our role in growing the economy.
Wow,
thanks, Lorenzo.
Thanks, George. That's incredible. I mean, I was hoping for a few enablers. Certainly, you give us quite a variety of options for small businesses to really anchor themselves into the opportunity to go digital. Mr. Yoon, who I remind you is the CEO of Samsung Africa. What's your take and what's your approach to this challenge? What's your perspective?
Okay. Good morning, Lorenzo. Thank you. And great to see you again, George. Probably we talked yesterday through this video call, the new normal. And good morning, everyone who are joining this conference. It's a great honor to have this session together with you. Regarding how we are working or support the small business in South Africa. Samsung globally, over 200 countries we do global operations. And without the small companies or medium companies, it's impossible to run a global business. So one thing I can point out today is how important small business for us is. I can. Samsung has been a level 1 BBB contributor since 2019. We all know this is collaboration with local companies, and this achievement in part because of SMMEs we are working with. So for example, I don't know how many people know that Samsung, we have a local factory in Durban. So we are producing almost over 500,000 TVs and monitors a year. The capacity is bigger, but we are currently producing some 500,000 TVs monitors from Durban. And as you can imagine, it provides a lot of factory-related local value chain system, working together with lots of local SMMEs. And second, I want to call out as a sales operation in South Africa. We are based in Bryanston, Johannesburg. And we generate business over 15 to 20 billion rand a year locally, together with all SMMEs. And obviously, yes, one of the biggest our business partner, and we are working all the new project with the Vodacom, technical, innovative, and the marketing collaborations. So through this SMME's partnership, we are creating more jobs and the business operations, logistics and service, and after repair service, like after service maintenance partners, they are all local. And George and I talked the other day, we need to keep our business properly, right? If we are struggling, then all the value chains associated with his business and my business will be a struggle. So 2020, we all know, very different for all of us with many challenges, as we are saying. And also consumers' behavior has changed a lot. For example, they are spending more time at home and with the family, and we call now that's a hometainment. Home and entertainment is a hometainment, and the staycation, stay and the vacation. That's a new normal. So consumers are doing more online shopping now, and because they go less visit to the stores. That's why Samsung, we just launched the e-store, e-commerce since August this year. By developing new business, this creates another new SME type of new business opportunities to collaborate with the small companies. For example, there is a lot of telemarketing and redemption and analytical skill set. So we are developing all those local business. And the other interesting thing I want to share with the viewers for today is there is another big part. We are creating a new SMME business that we call e-waste, because we have a television, fridges, and the smartphones, so which need the more of a greenish complete e-waste. So we started these initiatives, and now we have, as George said, private sector alone cannot complete this one. So government is helping us. DTI, Department of Trade and Industry, is supporting this together with us to establish this new business. So we started since last year, and it's a great progress. So different from Samsung's direct SME, we have contributed to South Africa in different to a lot of employee volunteer program, but this year we decided to donate rapid testing kits to President Cyril Ramaphosa, and thousands of smartphones and tablets we donated to the frontline responders. Some of the activities we did together with Vodacom, and I believe those frontline responders are heroes who need all our support. So that's why we are doing this donation. And based on the complying with the notion of a state safe and the resilient spirit of South Africans, I believe we can overcome this challenge together.
Excellent. Thanks, Mr. Yoon. This is it's fantastic to hear also from Samsung the plethora of initiatives that are going on. So let's move on to the next point we want to make, and that's also the reason why we invite to make a big point about innovation and how innovation is closely tied to socioeconomic growth. So in the chart in front of you, you see the countries, global countries, mapped on two axes. On the vertical axis, they're mapped per GDP per capita, and on the horizontal axis, they're mapped for the Global Innovation Index. Of the global innovation. As you can see, there is a very strong correlation between GDP per capita, which is the wealth of a nation, really, and the level of innovation and innovativeness that the country is able to produce. South Africa is close to, you can see the red dot close in between 30 and 35 as an innovation index. And obviously the way ahead is still quite long to reach the front runners, the UK, the Switzerland, and even China, with the last years. Of course, South Korea, of which we have, if you want, a representation via Samsung here today. So let's move on to actually making some more tangible examples. Let's go to the next page. So why is technology, why are we making such a strong case for technology and innovation? Because there is, the formula based on which a technological innovation generates incremental GDP is not linear, is very much exponential. Why not? Let's take, so first of all, let me explain you what are the different dimensions that create socioeconomic benefit after an innovation is introduced into a country. So first of all, there's a growth. So on the horizontal axis, you see three main components. One is the growth of competencies, so core competencies. The country from then onward knows how to do a new thing. The creation of jobs. We all know how problematic the employment situation is in South Africa. And then, of course, let's not forget the generation of consumer surplus. Then these three dimensions, you actually have to map them along two, and these are the two vertical dimensions that you see on the slide. They have a direct impact and an indirect spillover. So let's briefly take the example of Uber, for instance. So Uber came to South Africa around about, I believe, 2013. So there was a creation of, so obviously it's a new business model. It adds new core competencies certainly to the tech sector in the country, but also to actually to the drivers who are trained for service and induced to have a service mentality, and obviously trained to use the mobile app. So that's certainly a creation and increase in core competencies. Then there's a creation of jobs. Over 13,000 jobs were created by Uber, direct creation. And then there's a generation of consumer surplus, which in the case of Uber's was gigantic, around about 50% cheaper than the alternative available at the time. And not only you have this layer of direct consequences, but you have a gigantic layer of indirect consequences, because think about the things that you can build on top of the core competence you've created. So you can extend into, new companies will spur and will appear in the same realm, in the same area that Uber operates. In the South African case, Mr. Delivery, Order In, obviously Uber itself then built onto it Uber Eats. Those all created additional jobs, and those all created additional consumer surplus. So you see, that's why very much we want to make the case for innovation and technology to really give us the fastest gear that we can switch to grow out of the crisis. So let's move on to the next slide. So maybe Mr. Yoon, give us a little bit of a sense of, I mean, you gave us a good overview of all of the initiatives that Samsung is busy with related to the new normal. What specifically are the 2-3 technological advancements and innovations that are exciting you the most related to this geographic area? So South Africa and Africa, maybe, broadly speaking.
Yeah, Lauren, thank you for that question. I can start with innovation is Samsung's DNA. I'm glad to talk about the Samsung innovation. Actually, as I told you, I do often the video conference call with George and our business partners, as well as our global the headquarters, global CEO. So exactly yesterday, we talked about what's the current challenges in South Africa and US, Europe, and other countries. So at the end of the big conference, which we have every quarter, which is great. I can hear what our global CEO's direction and the Q4 and next year. So at the end, all of our global CEOs said, "Hey, many challenges, but let's focus on innovation." I knew as you introduced me over 32 years with Samsung, innovation, that's what they focus. Whenever we have a tough time, the solution from our side is innovation. So during the time of crisis like this, we think that that's our duty and responsibility to innovate in all the consumers. And for example, consumers need more connected home solutions now. And lucky enough, Samsung is in a very good position to help them, as we have smartphones, televisions, washing machine, all those things. So all devices are connected and communicate each other. So our key innovative the strategy is Internet of Things, IoT, AI, which now smartphones will understand you. We don't need to learn how to use the smartphone. So smartphone will catch your lifestyle type of thing, and the 5G in terms of speed and low latency. That's what we are trying, and there are not separate for those things, but they continue to evolve as part of our total innovative ecosystem. So let me give you one example. Last year, we launched the Galaxy Fold. I don't know if you can see the phone over here. This is Galaxy Fold, right?
You're wearing the brand.
It's yeah. So media described it as the most innovative smartphone in decade. Right? Samsung has for this foldable one is almost 100% market share in this category, because no one else can make this type of innovative product. So this one is a new one. We will launch together with the Vodacom and our business partners, Fold 2, which is 7.3 inch with the 5G, right? I told you Samsung is focusing on the IoT and the AI and the 5G. We already implementing those things with our product. And the other one is interesting is for the market, and this new normal is we have been seeing the market changes with more consumers working from home, right? So the most popular words these days, can you guys hear me type of thing, right? So working from home changed our normal, the new normal, and spending time with their family. So that's why we launched it last month, the Galaxy Note 20. That is a 6.9 inch, a very powerful phone, and we call that the powerful phone that empowers you work and play. Why we call that? So with almost a 7-inch phones, or foldable is a 7.6 inch, we don't need a tablet and we don't need PCs to join the web conference call. And the other key part technology we are focusing on and try to bring into South Africa is consumers are more pay attention on health and the wellness. So as the part of the new normal, consumers are increasingly focused on how they can improve his or her health and their family's wellness as well. So Samsung Galaxy Watch has been updated with a new service that helps track your lifestyle and give feedback in real time. So, for example, recently, this is what we launched with one of business partner, the insurance company, One Life. So those customers are wearing Samsung Galaxy Watch and communicate to the insurance the server, then they can get over R500,000 more benefit only because they are wearing the Galaxy Watch. So the watch, for example, will provide more blood pressure and the ECG and the blood oxygen monitoring. Those are coming soon because we are under the testing to the authorities. So those are what we are trying to bring all the innovative technologies and products into South Africa.
Wow, that's incredible. Thanks, Mr. Yoon. So 5G, IoT, artificial intelligence, George, what's your take? What's common your take on that?
I mean, obviously, those technologies are key. It's very much our bread and butter, what we do. I think probably more importantly, if I can just go back one step, is for us, it's got to be customer-centric innovation. So what do consumers want? The way we conduct business now is fundamentally different from how we used to conduct business in the past. The days of building products and propositions in sort of a factory and so on and putting it out in the market are gone. We have a research and insights team that does investigative work with consumers out there, and then we test it again to see that we've got it right before we launch any product. So we're getting more right than wrong for obvious reasons, because you're asking customers. So you don't need to guess, you don't need to forecast, you need to involve them in the collaboration process and co-creation process. And that comes to the customer centricity approach that we've taken. The second thing is around agility. So speed and the ability to pivot is becoming increasingly more important. If you look at what's happened over the last few months, it's quite obvious that those organizations that have had the ability to move quickly, agile, speed, and pivot would have benefited somehow or dealt with this chaos pandemic in a better way than perhaps those that haven't. And that requires an investment into those capabilities, which will build for the future. So it sounds super simplistic, but I think it's important to highlight that, because a lot of good ideas don't get the necessary investment, and then therefore there is no real true innovation and catering for consumers to look at that organization. If you look at the channel shifts during lockdown, if you don't have an e-commerce capability and your stores are shut down for retail purposes during lockdown levels, you have a real problem. So one has to pivot very quickly to see what kind of products and services are available online, on your app, on the website, what kind of logistics that you have in place to keep your logistics environment going. Because suddenly, if your e-commerce capability really takes off, you need the requisite logistics partners in place to make sure that that's capable of delivering on those. It goes without reason to say that work from home has become a big deal. So entertainment, connectivity, schooling, all those kind of requirements has been big. I think the last comment I want to make is probably not many people know, but we have a number of subsidiaries in our organization. We're a company called the Speed Point Terminals. We have a company called Mezzanine that just develops apps, and we've gone very deep into farming and digital farming in particular, which we think is an important part of food sustainability going into the future. We have an organization called IoT Next, which delivers services in South Africa and abroad, and more IoT with narrowband IoT as a technology capability from a network infrastructure perspective will make sure that these products become more and more affordable. So I think it's got to be in your DNA. It's got to be customer centric. You've got to put your money where your mouth is. And these investments largely are not small. You have to be agile, and you have to have the ability to pivot at speed, because requirements of consumers are changing all the time, and guaranteed that they won't look the same in future. My crystal ball is not that clear. I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but I do know that it's not going to look like what it is today, or certainly what it was 6 months ago. So pivoting at speed and being agile is really key.
Excellent. Thanks, George. And the one good thing, if we have to find one of this COVID tragedies, very much that, if you take, for instance, the Italian economy example, but this is just, very similar stats can be found in any other countries. You had the increase in digital penetration at a society level in 5 months that you would have expected or was forecasted over 5 years. So this obviously helps the agenda of companies that are innovative as much as Vodacom, Vodafone, and Samsung, for example, of course. Okay, so let's. Obviously, the theory is always easy. The practice is always difficult. So in the spirit of trying to leave our listeners with some practical tools and thinking points, let's move to the third part of the presentation. So what do businesses really need to keep in mind if they want to innovate and being innovative? So I would like to give you a couple of stats, a couple of food for thought. And we look at a lot of companies wanting to innovate or to be more innovative or to enter new businesses. What's really speaking very clearly is one thing is follow your core competences. Innovation is great, but you cannot innovate starting from a set of core competences that is too distant from where you want to go as an organization. So understand your company's core competences and evolve organically from those. The percentage it's been studied by actually Harvard Business Review, the percentage of success of growth for instance, along your value chain, so without necessarily linking up to your core competences, vis-a-vis the probability of successful growth while you follow your core competences. So the latter has a success rate of 1 in 3. So 1 in 3 companies that follow their core competences in growing are successful, and only 1 in 7, so 14%, for the ones that don't follow. So rather, half the companies that actually maybe follow the value chain, but don't follow closely and attach to their core competences, which brings us obviously very much to gathering insights from your customers and your customer needs. So George mentioned the customer centricity. That's key. That's in a way easy because your customers are there and they're telling you what out of the things that you are already doing or similar to the things that you're already doing, they would want more of or differently. Now the second, if we go to the next slide, the second food for thought I'd like to leave you with is that when you decide, okay, I'm going to innovate in a specific area, I'm going to enter fintech, I'm going to add a layer of AI onto my consumer insight, whatever it is. You have EP streams on the table. You have the partner, the buy, and the build option. So many companies, especially in the last 10, 20 years, have sort of filled themselves with big buzzwords for a couple of years without necessarily building the core competences behind those buzzwords, and then sort of convinced themselves and gathered the courage to build from scratches and reinvent the wheel in many cases, and innovate completely alone and completely stand alone. very few of these cases. So these are the cases that obviously have the highest return on investment, because you create everything from scratches or connected to your core competencies, but obviously you have also the lowest probability of success. The second option is the buy, which is if you want an intermediate option in terms of probability and success and return on investment. And seemingly the holy grail is, in terms of probability of success, is the partner option, which obviously you compromise on the return on investment. Particularly interesting is if you are to choose the partner option, who is gaining over time the technological edge in that particular scale, and who is gaining over time or retaining over time the customer relationship. Typically, partnerships are not always well balanced, and that is a very, very important question to think about and to bring to the top priority of your agenda if partnership is the way you are going. Let's move to the next page. So why don't you, maybe George, let's start with you. Why don't you give us in a rapid fire sort of your tricks and tips internally at Vodacom in terms of making innovation work? And surely you have lessons learned from successes and setbacks and failures. So for leaders and decision makers out there?
It's a great question, because often what happens is you only hear of the success stories. If you have a culture that absolutely does not allow for failures, and I'm not suggesting we should promote failures, or neither do I suggest that we should be sluggish in our approach, but it should be acceptable that in testing things and in experimenting, there has to be failures before you hit real success and the sweet spots. So you have to have a culture that allows it to happen. We've tried to create a culture that is planning for the future. So we plan for obviously beyond the very short, very much underpinned by innovation, agility I've spoken about, and then the investment into these areas. You need amazing skills, and for that there's a lot that you can do. So what we've done is we've created a Vodafone University, which has got a whole bunch of programs to encourage the future thinking, the future learning, and what are those programs, initiatives, training skills that you will require into the future. We've got LinkedIn Learning. For example, we invested about 400 million just in this last year on skills development for our employees. We had about just over 30 million leadership development in courses for senior leadership in the organization. So it's never too late to learn, and you should never stop learning, because the world is changing at a rapid pace. So this is continuous improvement process that takes place. And we've partnered with organizations like INSEAD, Harvard, Gordon Institute of Business Science as an example. So we've been of innovation, so we're still a young organization. We have been sort of globally recognized by the board of Vodafone for quite a lot of innovation in Africa, but also in products that go to the European markets, across technology, financial services, and so on. And we seem to have a strength for identifying these kind of innovative opportunities. We right now have created a partnership which should go commercially live in March with Ant and Alipay, so a sort of marketplace. We've launched some e-commerce capabilities under our Vodabucks rewards and loyalty program. So quite clearly, these are one of the benefits that will come through as a result of being involved with the Vodacom organization in some way, because it cuts across a number of different organizations and partnerships. Quite difficult to determine when to partner, when to build, when to buy. A couple of factors to consider. Obviously, the price and the commercials with anything is a big factor. Speed to market. Sometimes you can build something much cheaper, but it will take you much longer, and therefore you've missed the opportunity. So speed to market for sure. And then the kind of structure of what the organization could look like in future. So how does one pivot, given the fact that we know change is coming? Is it better in this instance to partner or build? Those are the kind of key criteria that I would suggest go into the considerations for when one makes this kind of decision. And I'll probably finish off lastly by saying trying to instill this DNA culture of innovation. We have internal programs called Innovate, so staff can submit ideas all the time, and it goes through a process of seeing who makes it to the finals. We have what we call hackathons, so we create scenarios in the organization, and 24 hours, no sleep, a bunch of teams get together and they create solutions for challenges that have been put on the table. And staff can win up to R1 million in prize money annually, and we really try and encourage this so that it fosters that kind of initiative and culture of innovation. And that's really how we're trying to stay ahead of the curve, so to speak, Lorenzo.
Excellent, George, that helps. Mr. Yoon, what makes Samsung ZA special? Give us a little bit of the secret ingredients of such a longer history of successful innovation.
Well, yes, thank you, Lorenzo. And I can tell you the most important thing in Samsung side, our DNA and culture for the innovation and technology is first, we are trying to listen what our consumers or business partners, as George said, consumer-centric and resilience, those are very important. So the way we keep up with the innovative cultures and DNA is, I can tell you, starting from people, right? We are trying to listen from our business partners and try to provide what they want, right? What they want means consumers or business partners. So globally, I told you, Samsung, we have over 200 countries operations. So if each country we are hearing from our business partners, there will be thousands of requests. So we are respect all what they are saying. And actually what George said is very, technology driven, the preparation for the future, right? It's not something we can launch after a couple of months preparation. So continue to be customer centric and very agile to the market request. So how can we do that? I can give you another example. So globally, we have over 70,000 the research and development engineers in Samsung, inside of Samsung. We have partners, but on the inside of Samsung, we have over 70,000 research and R&D the engineers. And over half of them have a master's degree or PhD from globally. So they are focusing on this year and the next 2 years. Not out of those 70 engineers, 40 engineers are dedicated for the mobile phone, tablet, and the wearable, all the mobile solutions, and over 30,000 engineers are dedicated for supporting televisions and the washing machine, the fridges type of thing. So this is one of the way we are trying to listen what our business partners or consumers want. And based on all dedicated our engineers who are very qualified to run the daily operations. I think that's one way the culture and DNA we are doing. So, and our business partners' requirement, we already set up for next 2, sometimes 3 years product roadmap. When are you going to launch this certain product in March next year, April, November? We already set up for next 2 years. So for those 40,000, 30,000 engineers are working day and night and working toward to meet all the requirement and the schedule. I think that's why, although we have many challenges these days, we hit all the launch schedule and providing Galaxy Fold type of the most innovative product. with a much higher resolution. So on top of that, the last thing I can point it out is there is another incremental 25,000 R&D engineers. They are more of a PhD level. They are preparing for the next 5 or 10 years. Right? The uncertainty of the technology for the future, as George said, it's not quite certain. There are many different directions how the IoT, AI, and 5G can be next step will be 6G. So those 25,000 engineers are more focused on the future 5 years, 10 years. I think the kind of a culture Samsung has to catch up or try to lead the innovative industry.
Very interesting. Thanks you both. Let me catch a couple of questions. I think we're running a little bit behind schedule. Let me try and catch at least a couple of questions from the audience. So maybe a quick one for George. What makes Vodalend different from a bank? What are the competitive sort of differences, competitive advantages? I don't know if you have a couple of highlights or insights to share on that. How do you see yourself vis-a-vis a bank?
Yeah, thanks. We a different role to play. One is the application process. No one has that kind of process, but of course that's just the journey rather than the actual deal itself. We offer training. There's a whole marketplace that we've put together. So what we do is we actually try and guide in the direction of whatever industry they're particularly going in. I'll give you a quick example. We actually have a person that's gone into a bakery environment through one of our loans that's provided. And suddenly through the partnerships that we have, we've already created a whole network. It links itself almost to the digital farming, if you like. So when you look at the whole supply chain, we can suddenly, through our retail partnerships, connect someone with the very products that they, in essence, are needing for the bakery to produce the ultimate end result. So there's training, there's guidance, there's the whole marketplace partnership that we align. The rates are favorable, so it's not that we're competing from a rate perspective. That's not the intention. It was more the value add of what we could offer to ensure the success, as opposed to the failure within the first 3 years that we see to the tune of about 80% of SMEs that get going, as I mentioned in the beginning. So it's more to ensure a level of success, because we see that as a big growth area for economic development, given the amount of employment that will take place in the SME level. So those are a few. I mean, I'm obviously happy to take offline. There's quite a few additional comments that I could.
No, I think that gives a good first level of understanding. And I mean, you both are. I mean, we hear often the struggle to find the right type of capabilities, digital capabilities in country, in South Africa and in Africa. And this is another question we received from the audience. I mean, what kind of skills specifically are you struggling to find, if any? Maybe Mr. Yoon or George, any one of you with a strong perspective on this.
Do you want to go first, Sun?
Yes, George, please.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, Lorenzo, sorry. Can you repeat what's the question?
If what digital skills are you struggling to find in the country? So are you struggling for talent in country and for Africa? And if so, which skills specifically?
Well, for us, I don't think we have any digital technology the problem or the employee in South Africa. So, for example, as I said, the 5G, for example, the 2 years ago when I said, hey, 5G is a kind of a new innovative the strategy and direction. Yes, there was some delay. For example, in order to employ the 5G and to give the 5G benefit to the consumers, we need the government allocate the spectrum type of thing. So at those days it was not quite sure, but now I think government already announced the spectrum auction. So government is aligned, and like Vodacom, for example, we already tested and how we can launch the latest new product with Vodacom, and that's what we passed. And I got all the support from our the research and R&D engineers. So sometimes it's slow, but I don't think we are struggling any issues. Like the other one, artificial intelligence, is something. Directional-wise, there is no issues, right? How soon we can implement those things. So as you can imagine, there is more voice command versus you use click and type of thing. So IoT, as the George and we talked, actually there are many projects we launched with Vodacom for actually the last 1 year. 2 years is one example is embedded SIM, which means if you have only your watch, you don't need to bring your smartphone when you go to the grocery or when you go to the gym. So only use the Galaxy Watch, and you can get the email, you can talk without carrying. So there are some slow and a little delay launch, but I don't see any the challenges, difficulties in our country.
Okay, thank you. Maybe
George?
George, if you wanna comment on this one.
Yeah, I think just for us, it's you're looking at behavioral scientists, behavioral linguists, CX, UX, design. That's quite critical. So it's not that they are not available; they're scarce. So what starts happening is the premium for these guys is really fine. And I think one of the skills that are going to be quite difficult in the future is just management skills, real authentic leadership skills, servant leadership, given a remote working environment. Is going to be quite difficult to manage resources from a work from anywhere kind of concept in the future, as opposed to in a physical environment. I think that will be an art and a skill that will have to be honed in for sure.
George, maybe just one last quick question to close off with. What are the key, and you mentioned Vodacom's insight function, what are the key success factors in your view? Because I mean, it's very easy to set up a function that looks at customers' insight, very difficult to actually do it right. Very few companies globally manage. What are the key success factors? What are the ingredients that you really think made the difference?
Yeah, it's a great question. Firstly, you have to go in with a very serious intention. And I know it sounds obvious, but we sometimes want the function, but we don't like the outcome. So you have to resource it properly. It has to report to the most senior person in the organization, because it needs credibility and support. And you need the courage as an organization to accept the results of feedback that customers tell you, because very often, I'll give you a very quick example. We want to put a summer campaign into the market. We ask customers what they think. We have internal campaigns to try and get the ideation going. And then we test it with consumers. Mm-hmm. And what we think is our number one campaign, customers don't like. Very much to listen very carefully to what consumers are telling you, because otherwise you've just wasted your time in asking them. So there's a maturity in an organization that's quite critical to listen to feedback. It's a bit like I say, Lorenzo, please be very honest with me about what you think about me, until you are honest, and then I'm not in a position to handle your honesty. Yep. There's the same level of maturity that's required in an organization. So it needs to report into a senior environment. It needs to be well resourced, and it needs to be very, very well listened to when you get the feedback from consumers. Otherwise, you've just completely wasted your time.
That makes a hell of a lot of sense, and thanks for pointing it out. And I'm glad that there are mature organizations like this out there. And I'd like to thank you both, Mr. Yoon and Jorge Mendes. Thanks a lot for participating and for sharing your insights and your point of view on the centrality of innovation and the centrality of the customer in the discussion today. Thanks a lot, Pamina and the Chamber, for Italian Chamber for hosting us. And thanks everybody for joining us today. And thanks also for the ones that will read the document and listen to the recordings of this online. Thank you very much. And with this one, have a great weekend ahead.